I think like people do have innovative ideas, but they never try to expand on them, right? Like, I think if you write them down, you discuss them with someone, maybe it will grow roots and turn into something. So, but until you do and you give it that opportunity, that thought's never going to turn into something else.
What's up, everybody? Thank you once again for tuning in to Work, Grind, Hustle. Man, I'm so excited for today's interview. I actually hopped on a call with one of my best friends, Mr. Robert Amick. Robert actually shares all about his journey towards his current position as the Vice President of Capital Markets, actually at a huge commercial real estate investment advisory company, helping big businesses place millions into real estate. We talk a lot about mindset in this episode, actually really diagnosing a story or dissecting a story where Rob unjustly got let go from a position and how he had to structure his mindset and his thinking to make sure that actually propelled him into future businesses, into future positions. So I'm super excited. You're gonna learn a lot, right? Especially if maybe you've been let go from a position because of no fault of your own. You didn't really know how to react and how to move forward. And seemingly things can be out of our control, but actually, you're always in control of the way you choose to react to situations. So I'm super excited for today's interview. Guys, I want to ask, as always, if you take anything out of the episode, if you get any sort of nuggets, please do me a single favor and just share it with somebody else. Shoot them a text message. Better yet, share the episode on social media. We really appreciate your help in growing the show, growing the channel, so we can keep bringing you amazing content week in and week out. So, but for now, let's hop right on into it. So, Robert, thanks for joining us. Man, go ahead. Why don't you introduce yourself a little bit?
Thank you for having me. Let's see where to start. As Wayne said, I am a vice president of Capital Markets Group, currently in DC. Live in Washington, D.C., live downtown, actually, in my own apartment. I have been at the current company that I'm with about 2 years. But before that, I worked for several different companies. One was a large private equity firm that pretty nationwide. They have $200 billion in assets. So you can probably figure out among a handful which one it might be. And before that, I worked for a developer and brokerage firm up in Philadelphia. As Wayne said, we grew up together, so I'm from Roanoke, Virginia. Haven't really traveled too far since. Did undergrad at University of Virginia and just finished my master's at Georgetown.
Beautiful, man. Beautiful. Great synopsis right there. Dude, so right out of college, you've sort of been in the same field, huh?
Yeah, well, I actually started off in the architecture school at UVA and quickly realized that, one, I was not artistically inclined as the other students around me. Yeah. And two, that I didn't necessarily want to be an architect, and there you're really like stuck in the architecture school. You're actually you're not in the same school that other students are. You're really just in the architecture school and not taking other classes. And I felt like I wasn't really getting that full UVA education, and ended up switching to the College of Arts and Sciences, right? And from there I had to choose a major, but I was in the middle of still trying to figure out what exactly I wanted to do. And one of the paths that kind of made sense given my background, the fact that I've taken a fair amount of architecture classes at that point, would have been commercial real estate development, because a lot of architects actually end up making a switch later to real estate development because it pays a lot more than what you would make just practicing design. So I basically made a decision to, at probably the age of 19, to just attack the commercial real estate industry pretty hard career-wise, and turned only once at one company while I was in college that's commercial real estate development related, and then worked at a financial services company while in college as well. But after that, strictly have done commercial real estate related things.
Nice. Already have a great amount of experience. And so with, all these different companies and experience you get, you said you had one internship, but a lot of times you're asked to do maybe tasks that you're not the right fit for, or even simple tasks, but it's simply because they get sort of pawned off on you, right?
Yeah, yeah.
That's kind of where this idea came from. You mentioned so it was a private equity company. So they had like $2 billion in
$200
assets.
billion in
Excuse me.
Equity under management, or assets under management. But yeah, that's actually kind of leading me on to a good story, actually. So I had worked there. So I was working there on a contract basis, right? Funny fact, actually, I've never been a full-time employee of a company. I've only worked contractually for companies. So
when you say you're there on a contract basis, sorry, what do you mean by that?
I'm a 1099 employee, right? Like I'm not getting paid a salary. I don't make benefits. So I've pretty much been an entrepreneur, not really thinking about it, because I've been effectively a consultant for my entire career.
Nice.
But when I moved to DC to go to graduate school, the first job I took was working on the redevelopment of this retirement home, and that lasted a couple months. And I really wanted to get out of kind of this operation duties and get more towards the financial deal-driven stuff, and had an opportunity to work at this large private equity firm that invests largely in real estate throughout the United States. They invest, literally in everything from trailer parks to downtown office buildings in New York City to condo high-rises in Miami. So pretty much everything. And the opportunity was pretty cool. I'd be coming in they spent about 6 months working in the U.S. real estate group at the fund level, doing analysis and consolidation, kind of auditing the asset managers' models, putting them all together, because they own at the time like 350 different, we'll call them assets, but effectively properties. Yeah. And so just having to kind of track the analysis on those, get everything together so that the head of the group could make fund level decisions about, acquisitions, dispositions, being allocated certain regions and stuff like that. So I worked that for 3 or 4 months, and then on a Wednesday, I believe, they told me that my last day was on Friday. And, it was a contract job.
It's a contract
job. Right. I always knew that there was a time, but you would think that they would, one, give me a better heads up, and two, not, tell me that it was like a 6-month job and then cut it short halfway through. But, whatever, right? I just thought, I might as well go to their HR and see if there would be anything else that they could give me in the meantime that would sort of support me until I can find something full-time elsewhere. So I ended up doing that with the recommendation of the VPs that I was working with, which helped a lot. And HR came up with this job that was working in a group that was titled External Affairs. And what the External Affairs group does is leads their investor conferences. So basically they have all these large institutions that come in and invest in their funds, and that's the money that they turn around and invest and manage for, we'll say, anywhere from 4 to 15 years, right?
Yeah.
And every time they raise a new fund, whether it be, $200 million or $5 billion fund, they put on a huge show by renting out a very nice hotel, bringing in these investors, putting them up for the weekend, very extravagant dinners, tours of private things you wouldn't normally get to do, impressing them, and then also educating them on this new investment fund that they're raising, right? So I was working for this group for about a month, doing, as you kind of led to, very bullshit tasks at times. At one time, they literally had me making name tags for their new associates. And the ironic part of that was, one of the main reasons I was there was to try to get a full-time associate spot with them, right? So not only did I find myself kind of backpedaling into this horrible back office external affairs position, I was literally sitting there making the name tags for the new associates who took the jobs that I wanted to take, and the real reason I was there. So did that for a while, and I was doing the job. I wouldn't say I was doing it with a smile on my face. I was, obviously applying a lot elsewhere, but I was doing what I needed to do. And then one of the bigger investment conferences was coming, and that was for their large buyout fund where they acquire private companies. And I was tasked with making sure that the people who had reservations in their hotel blocks for this conference were on the actual conference list, meaning they didn't want people who were outsiders taking their discounts for the hotels that they had arranged with these very nice hotels downtown DC, right? And
so just checking that they were invited. right?
Right.
You were
Basically,
invited
checking, make sure you're
appropriately.
invited. Therefore, you should be, staying on our dime in our hotels. Right.
Beautiful.
And so what I did is I took the hotel list. I ran, I think it was like a VLOOKUP on Excel, pretty easy thing to do, and just noticed the ones that weren't, corresponding to the other list I had been given by the large private equity group. And when I did that, I noticed, there were several quote unquote investors that weren't on the list, or for whatever reason it didn't match, right? And I was tasked with just emailing those investors and saying, hey, we noticed that you were on the block of our hotel, but you weren't on the invitation list for the conference. Just wanted to check in and see what's going on with that, right? And so I did that. I only had to do that with probably 5 different names that I got out of, we'll say 500, right? And so I went ahead and did just that. I said, hey, let me know if this is word for word. Hey, let me know if this is a mistake. But I just noticed you weren't on the invitation list, but you had booked within the hotel block. Just want to check in and make sure that, this was a mistake on the hotel or our end, and just, see if we can smoothen things out. And I think probably 45 minutes later, I get a hasty email from a guy who he's very high up at one of the larger teacher pension funds in a very large state in the United States. And he basically said, something along the lines of, wow, I can't believe I've fallen on such low on the priority list or totem pole for you guys. I'll have to check in with your managing director and make sure I'm still invited.
So why did he say that? Why did he think he's so low on the priority list?
So basically, I don't know if he took it as, hey, we don't think you're invited anymore. Why are you in our hotel? Maybe, perhaps it was something like that, right? I think this guy was a bit of an egomaniac, but we'll give him benefit of the doubt and say maybe he was just totally mistaken and thought I was insulting him by saying, hey, you guys are no longer invited. So ends up, of course, I go back and check, and basically the hotel itself had misspelled his name on the reservation. So then when I ran the VLOOKUP, it didn't come to a match anywhere, and that's where the mistake was. So then I email him and explain the exact error. Flash forward 3 or 4 days later, I get a call from the group that I was contracting through for the large private equity firm. And
don't worry, man, we'll bleep that out for you.
For the large private equity firm. And basically the guy said, hey, your services are no longer required at this firm. Please don't go into work today. And I kind of knew that it might be related to that. And the funny part is I actually had gone home the night that it happened and told my roommates, I explained what happened, and I made the joke, haha, what if they fired me for this? And then flash forward 3 days later, I was actually let go. I was told to send, a nice email to the MDs and stuff at the group. And I did, but I also attached the exact email chain and everything that had gone down and said, this is the chain of events that led up to this, basically clearing my name just in case I ever do business with them or maybe work with them later. Mm-hmm. So that was kind of the event of things. Ends up, it actually worked out well because I came upon my group, within 3 weeks after that event. But at the time, it was definitely deflating and pretty shitty.
No doubt about it, man. Well, thanks for sharing. I'm going to backtrack a little bit and touch on sort of some minutiae of the story, if it's okay with you.
Yeah.
Cool. So you're on a contract job there, first off, which I think, what's your perception between people solely just looking for maybe full-time salary jobs versus contract jobs?
So this is kind of a mixed bag. I think a lot of recruiting firms take advantage of people that are looking for full-time work by putting them in these contract opportunities. And I kind of knew that going into it, but the only reason I took this one is because it was an opportunity that I probably wouldn't have had on a full-time basis, right? To get in with this really elite private equity firm when I hadn't had any, private equity experience or high-level investment banking experience at the time.
Gotcha. So even though it wasn't or it was seemingly almost a lower position, right? Because you're looking for full time, right? You're shooting your
Right.
shots high. Do you think that by taking that lower position, that lower contract job, do you think that maybe propelled you into where you are now?
Yeah, absolutely. I think while, I was only there for a short period of time, I think it's important that I, oftentimes mention that I have been there and have seen how they underwrite their deals, and use a lot of their underwriting in the way I underwrite things and the macros that I run on our financial models and stuff. So it gives me a lot of legitimacy to leverage, the fact that I was there, and kind of a lot of people being on the outside looking in of a big group that's very highly aspired, and a lot of like Harvard business kids work there,
Yeah.
people really think, holy shit, like this kid is really smart because he at one point been hired by this group. So it's given me a lot of legitimacy that and opportunities that I probably wouldn't have been given otherwise.
Yeah. So it's interesting. So my point in that just being that, you were shooting your shot at one thing, right? And looking for, of course, a full-time gig. But a lot of times these opportunities present themselves to us that we're not expecting, right? In the moment, maybe they are seemingly bad, or of course, it's not what we're wanting to do, but look how much good it can create into the future, right? I think that's sort of the overarching theme of this entire story, is it not?
Yeah, absolutely. That, and another like big theme, I guess I didn't really touch on it. Right before I took the second position with them, the VP that I was promoting, or that I was not promoting, that I was working under, warned me that a lot of the work would be very low level, and that if I was going to have an issue with that, just let her know now, and maybe this just isn't a fit, and we can find someone that's kind of fresh out of college that would be more of a fit for this. And at the time, like, I didn't really necessarily have a choice because I didn't have anything else lined up, and I really needed to make money because I was paying for grad school and living in DC at the time. So I took it, and I really wanted to take it. But looking back on it, like, I really should have taken that recommendation more into consideration, because some of the tasks I was given, like, I guess it's fair to give me and understand the big picture. Like, I probably shouldn't have been so frustrated as I was. But that part of that was just because I thought I deserved to be doing such higher things. But she did give me the warning, right?
She did give you the warning. So it's sounding to me that maybe you think you should have listened to her more.
I should have listened to her a little more, taken it more into consideration. It reminds me of a story where my parents went fishing, and it was really rough. And they're going on a 2-day fishing trip, not to get on too much of a tangent. And the captain told basically everyone on the boat, we'll refund you fully right now. It's going to be an extremely rough 2 days. Only 3 people took the refund. 90 something else other people got on that boat, and they were throwing up for 2 days. And the moral of the story is, always listen to the captain when he says, I'll give you a refund.
That's too funny. Yeah, no, I would take that refund for sure. That's interesting. So, let me ask you this, because you're saying, you should have listened to this VP's advice, right? And then, of course, the captain's advice from the story of your parents' fishing trip. How can you sort of differentiate between if you should be taking someone's advice or if you shouldn't be taking someone's advice?
That's a good question. I think it's pretty circumstantial, but I mean, you got to see like the perspective, right? Like, she needed someone to fill this role and do the shitty work that needed to get done. And so she was just being honest to me. She wasn't necessarily trying to persuade me. When I'm a broker trying to get these people to bring their money in, like, and I'm giving them certain advice, they obviously take it with a grain of salt, because they know that my perspective is that of a broker trying to get this deal done, right? So they're going to use their own assumptions, their own cap rates, their own rent assumptions and stuff like that. So it just really depends on the circumstances.
Gotcha. What I've heard a good amount of times in the past is a great way to evaluate it is if the person that's giving you advice, it's about one subject, would you essentially trade places with them?
Right.
Right. The example for your parents on the fishing trip, it's like, okay, well, we're going fishing. So, okay, well, if the captain is giving me fishing advice, right? I want to know more about fishing. Would I, in theory, want to be in his position for this task, for this subject? Yes. right? So then
Right.
you can take their advice. So in your case with the VP, she's telling you, this is going to be lower tier work. I don't think this is maybe right for you, what you should be doing. Was she in a position that you yourself would have wanted to be in?
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. I mean,
Probably.
no one knew also that I would piss off some douchey investor.
Yeah,
So.
of course, yeah. We'll throw that totally out of the way, right? It was just like your day to day, like you said, you weren't super happy, and so you should have taken her advice.
Exactly.
Just interesting. Yeah. Either way, so cool. So you sort of swung it back right to before you took that second job, which this is, you swung past this so quickly, but I think it's a pretty noteworthy thing that when you heard your contract was getting cut early, right? What'd you say that you did?
Let's see. Well, so just going to HR and saying, hey, are there any other opportunities in the business? At that point, there's a number of things. I really did need the money, and just needed to keep my cash flow, personal cash flow. But I also still wanted to hang on with one foot in the water at the group, just to see, who knows, maybe something will come out of it, or at least it would give me a few more months on the resume when I go elsewhere.
Which is great, man. Honestly, I applaud you for it, because sort of one of our overarching themes for today is, stuff's going to happen to you that are seemingly not your fault or out of your control, but you always have control of how you respond to things, right? Of how you react to situations. And so the way that you reacted, instead of how I think a large majority of the population would be super pissed, I had a 6-month contract. This is absolute bullshit. How could you do this to me? You owe me, whatever. You decided to look at it. Okay, well, you know what? How can I stay? How can I keep this being a positive for me and keeping my experience building up, right?
Right.
Yeah. I don't know, just pretty interesting in that state. And so either way, fast forwarding to kind of the end of the story, right, where the situation happened. Right. How are you feeling about it? Where was your mindset at? Because clearly it wasn't your fault. And how did you, work that it didn't just kick you down into the dirt, but, you pushed yourself and picked up back to where you are today?
Well, so it was an interesting time because I was in grad school. I was reading a lot of business cases and certain things that professors recommended. And one of the things was this hedge funder who runs this company called Bridgewater Capital, and he has this book called Principles. And basically, this guy I definitely recommend it. It's really good. And the way he lives his life is he writes principles down and corrects his principles as it goes, right? And looks at his mistakes, creates a principle out of that mistake, and uses that principle going forward to avoid that mistake. So it's everyone does it, but no one really thinks about it, right? But the action of actually writing the principle down and creating a book of your own principles is actually very useful, whether it's investing, life, business, whatever it is. I'm sure, being a parent, that would be super useful, things like that. So at the time, I had actually started that. So I was fortunate in that I was able to look at it in a lens of educational, an educational lens, because I was already sort of in that mode. I was, taking night classes at Georgetown. So I was thinking about things sort of as a business case. So I almost took the own events of my career as sort of a career case, and kind of just wrote everything down that had happened, into a small story, and then analyzed it like we did the cases for grad school, and really broke things down and say, where did I personally go wrong? Well, I should have maybe double checked to make sure that name wasn't I should have just relied on this Excel VLOOKUP, right? Things like that. But at the end of the day, it was just a matter of this guy ruining my opportunity because he wanted to be petty. And that's what it really was. Yeah. And so the lesson I really learned is how to avoid giving people the platform to be petty, right? So
very
it's a combination of ways to look at it, but at the end of the day, I don't think I did enough wrong to justify what had happened. But I'm still trying to learn and take something from it.
Definitely, right. And so I think That's pretty great to hear that you took almost that third party perspective, looked at it
Right.
as a case study like this. And then do you think that because, you didn't really do much wrong with it at all, do you think that that was a big part in why it almost didn't affect you that much? Or was there something else going on?
I think it helped too that I was pretty miserable with the second position. That like
Yeah.
it was almost like a opportunity to get out of it without me having to ruin the relationship. Although I don't know how well that ended up anyways, but it just
Yeah.
sort of forcefully got me out of the shitty position of making name tags, right?
Yeah. So,
So
um,
had I really really like enjoyed that position and wanted to stay there long term, I probably would have been more devastated emotionally.
uh,
But it was kind of like a saving grace in a way.
a saving grace in a way, right? You took the words right out of my mouth. It's like a blessing in disguise. If you can
Right.
remember back to when it happened, were you thinking that sort of same way that, I didn't like this anyways. This is actually a good thing. I'm guessing probably no.
No, no. Well, what really is tough is because at the end of the day, I still wanted like that full time associate spot on front office, working on actual real estate deals in the real estate team. And the only thing that really hurt was like, damn, did that hurt my opportunity in the future, perhaps? Because the VP that I was under in the real estate group said, go get a year somewhere else at a smaller shop and then come back and, an associate position's yours. Like, we know what you can do. We know what you're capable of. You're a really smart guy. You adapted super quickly and you fit in here. So that really, like, the only thing that really hurt was like, damn, like, did I just ruin the opportunity? Funny part is, I later found out pretty recently actually that their entire HR department was like shacked and they restarted essentially. And like, I talked to a bunch of their new HR people and like they had no recollection, or like I don't know if they didn't look deep in my records or whatever, or they just didn't record it.
Yeah.
So that's like not really, I don't think, ruining my chances too bad.
No, definitely not. That's so interesting, right? In the moment we're coming up with all these what ifs and ideas for things that seemingly will never even happen, right? I think
Right.
people a lot of times worry too much and they become just concerned or stressed or anxious about things that are not happening and will never happen, right? Super interesting, super interesting. Either way, so the last topic that I kind of want to bring up was what we discussed before the call. You were talking about sort of positivity around brokers and developers and sort of what
Right.
role positivity sort of just plays in their job. So if you can sort of just describe that for everybody.
Yeah. So I'll give you context for people who don't work in the commercial real estate industry. So developers and investors, kind of, you probably should know what those are. They're the people that are actually, whether they're buying land, getting it entitled, and getting the zoning to then build the property from nothing, take it through construction, and then either sell it or hold it, or they're actually buying existing properties. They're investors or developers, right? We call them principals. They're principal investors in commercial real estate. Then the intermediaries are the brokers, very much like realtors, those residential brokers are to people who are buying houses. We are intermediaries to the principals that are investing and developing commercial real estate.
Yeah.
So it's a very broad industry. Their brokers range from handle just leasing, meaning they'll either find space for tenants, or they'll represent landlords and find tenants to lease out space, or more of what we do, which is very transactional, meaning we either sell the properties, buy properties, represent the either the seller or the buyer, or we raise debt and equity for the transaction itself, right? And so one of the phrases that a lot of my professors at Georgetown and I've heard in the industry several times now is that in order to be a successful developer, you need to be constantly pessimistic. And that being because you're managing people's money, right? Like you're always checking, you're always, dotting your I's and crossing your T's. You're always, making sure that the timetables are where they should be, making sure that the permitting process is going as smoothly as possible, right? And you just basically you don't think anything is going to go right because a lot of the time it just doesn't. So you're really assuming the wrongdoings and everything that's going to go wrong. On the other side of the coin, to be successful as a broker, you need to be consistently optimistic, almost a constant euphoric state that nothing ever is going wrong, because you hear no so much. Sometimes when I'm on marketing properties, I'm on the phone making 300 calls in one day, and if I can get to someone, which only happens probably 15 to 20% of the time these days, because no one answers their fucking phone. But anytime I can get to someone, most of the time I'm hearing no, and this is the reason why. And it's just over and over and over again. And I sometimes can almost turn them, but most of the time, they're just not turnable. A lot of the time, their companies themselves, the way they raise a certain fund means that they just can't do certain projects. And so they're never going to be able to get talked out of that. Yeah. But still, like, you just hear no all the time until you do hear yes. And that one yes is very important. But to get there, you're going to hear a million no's. So you just have to be able to take the no's. And to take the no's, like, you just have to be aggressively optimistic, because if you're not and you're feeling down about it, like, the person on the other side of that phone is going to be able to tell that. And you're not going to sell them on the investment. So you just have to be overly optimistic every single time, no matter what, even if you don't believe in the deal itself.
That's so crazy, because, first job out of college for me was doing business-to-business, door-to-door sales, right? And it sucked, to be perfectly honest, right? But the whole thing about positivity was so important. You had to be in this mindset, in this just emotional state, because other people will pick up on it, right? What you're saying, even over the phone, people can kind of hear it. Like, I've even heard people say for phone sales that you can hear a smile through the phone. Right. Just the tonality.
Just smile while you talk on the phone, and you'll be a far better salesperson.
It changes the whole thing, right? And it's so important, because especially what you're talking about for a broker, right? If you're not positive, if you're not seemingly optimistic, are these people going to want to give you their money? Are they going to want to just trust you with whatever the deal is that's going on?
Right. No, they're not. Exactly.
Yeah. You're like, this guy who's selling it to me doesn't even believe in it. Why the hell should I believe in it?
Yeah.
Yeah. But then that's super interesting. Also, just that constantly pessimistic, because that's definitely not in it's never something that I would really advise someone, but that's just so interesting for that job.
It is if you're managing, hundreds of millions of dollars, right? Because that's what you're being paid to do. You're being paid to be educationally optimistic or pessimistic, right? So you know how to be pessimistic on these opportunities.
Yeah, exactly. That's your whole job.
And you're looking especially on the acquisition side of things, you're looking for reasons to say no. That is your job. You're checking the box and making sure it checks the boxes for you. And a lot of times they don't.
And that's good thing that those people are out there, right? They're looking out. That's what they're there for. Super interesting. But Rob, hey man, thanks once again so much for being on.
Thanks for having me on.
It's kind of funny that in the beginning, even you said, because you've been a contract employee and you've been sort of consulting, that it is very much that entrepreneurial mindset. And you and I just so often have these brainstorming calls and these mindset discussions that is, like, I swear that you work for yourself, that you own your own brokerage, right?
Right. Yeah. I think not enough people do it. I think, like, people do have innovative ideas, but they never try to expand on them, right? Like, I think if you write them down, you discuss them with someone, maybe it will grow roots and turn into something. So, but until you do and you give it that opportunity, that thought's never going to turn into something else.
That was awesome right there, man. That's a great ending. So, Rob, I appreciate it. If anybody wants to reach out to you, learn from you more, what would be the best way to do that?
I guess reach out to you for my contact info. You can also go to Greenwich, grp.com, and check out our contact information on there and probably find me.
greenwichgrp.com. Cool. I'll definitely link to
Connecticut.
Greenwich, like Connecticut. Cool. I'll link to it down below. Once again, thanks, man. I appreciate it.
Yep.
Till next time, my friend.
All right.
Later.
Boom, guys. So I hope you enjoyed that episode as much as I did. Like I said, Robert and I have actually been friends since kindergarten. And I continually learn from him week in and week out through our brainstorm sessions, through his knowledge in more of a quote unquote a corporate position. Just amazing insight. So guys, if you took anything out of today's episode, please do me the one favor. My one ask, the same thing from the beginning of the episode, is share this with a friend, share this with a colleague or a family member. Anyone who you think could get value, shoot it to them a text message, or better yet, share it over social media and help us to grow the show so we can keep bringing you valuable content week in and week out. So until next time, my name is Wayne Veldsman. You've been listening to Work, Grind, Hustle. Peace.